Jeremiah 52. Not written by Jeremiah himself, but put into his book at some point. His actual account of the fall of Jerusalem was in Jeremiah 39, the chapter we have labeled as 39. Zedekiah was 21 years old when he became king. And he reigned in Jerusalem 11 years. His mother's name was Hamutal, daughter of Jeremiah, not of course our Jeremiah, some other Jeremiah. She was from Libnah. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, just as Jehoiakim had done. It was because of the Lord's anger that all this happened to Jerusalem and Judah, and in the end he thrust them from his presence. Now Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon. He did so by sending envoys to Egypt to try to make an alliance with Egypt to fight Babylon. So in the 9th year of Zedekiah's reign, on the 10th day of the 10th month, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, marched against Jerusalem with his whole army. They camped outside the city and built siege works all around it. The city was kept under siege until the 11th year of King Zedekiah. On the 9th day of the 4th month, the famine in the city had become so severe that there was no food for people to eat. Then the city wall was broken through, and the whole army fled. They left the city at night through the gate between the two walls near the king's garden, where the Babylonians were surrounding the city. They fled toward the Arabah, but the Babylonian army pursued King Zedekiah and overtook him in the plains of Jericho. All his soldiers were separated from him and scattered, and he was captured. He was taken to the king of Babylon at Riblah in the land of Hamath, where he pronounced sentence on him. There at Riblah, the king of Babylon slaughtered the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes. He also killed all the officials of Judah. Then he put out Zedekiah's eyes, bound him with bronze shackles, and took him to Babylon, where he put him in prison to the day of his death. Don't know when that happened. Was that a year later, 10 years later, 20 years later? Don't know. He'd only been about 32 years old, so he could have lived a long time. Who knows? Doesn't say exactly. On the 10th day of the 5th month, in the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, Nebuzaradan, commander of the imperial guard, who served the king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem. He set fire to the temple of the Lord, the royal palace, and all the houses of Jerusalem. Every important building he burned down. The whole Babylonian army, under the commander of the imperial guard, broke down all the walls around Jerusalem. Nebuzaradan, the commander of the guard, carried into exile some of the poorest people and those who remained in the city, along with the rest of the craftsmen, those who hadn't been taken in previous exiles, and those who had gone over to the king of Babylon, voluntarily surrendered, as Jeremiah was telling them to do. But Nebuzaradan left behind the rest of the people, the poorest people of the land, to work the vineyards and fields. The Babylonians broke up the bronze pillars. This is from the temple itself here. These are the temple decorations and instruments. The Babylonians broke up the bronze pillars, the movable stands, and the bronze sea. That's where they cleanse themselves, the water basin where they cleanse themselves. That throughout the temple of the Lord, and they carried all the bronze to Babylon. These things would have been too heavy to carry by themselves, so they had to break them into parts and carry the bronze in parts. They took away also the pots, shovels, wick trimmers, sprinkling bowls, dishes, and all the bronze articles used in the temple service. The commander of the imperial guard took away the basins, censers, sprinkling bowls, pots, lampstands, dishes, and bowls used for drink offerings, all that were made of pure gold or silver. The bronze in the two pillars, the sea, and the 12 bronze bowls under. Remember that big wash basin was sitting on top of these 12 statues of bulls. And the movable stands which King Solomon had made for the temple of the Lord was more than could be weighed. Each of the pillars was 18 cubits high. Remember, the pillars had names. They had separate names. was 18 cubits high and 12 cubits in circumference. Each was 4 fingers thick and hollow. The bronze capital on top of the one pillar was 5 cubits high and was decorated with an network and pomegranates of bronze all around. The other pillar with its pomegranates was similar. There were 96 pomegranates on the side. The total number of pomegranates above the surrounding network was 100. The commander of the guard took as prisoners Sariah the chief priest, Zephaniah the priest next in rank, and the 3 doorkeepers. We've been hearing about this Zephaniah the priest a few times. This is not the same guy as Zephaniah the prophet. That guy was a member of the royal family. He was a descendant of Hezekiah the king. And of course the priests and the kings came from different families, so it's not the same guy. But we have been hearing that name several times. And the 3 doorkeepers. Of those still in the city, he took the officer in charge of the fighting men and 7 royal advisors. He also took the secretary, who was chief officer in charge of conscripting the people of the land, in charge of conscripting the people of the land, and 60 of his men who were found in the city. Nebuzaradan, the commander, took them all and brought them to the king of Babylon at Riblah. There at Riblah, in the land of Hamath, the king had them executed. So Judah went into captivity away from her land. This is the number of people Nebuchadnezzar carried into exile. In the 7th year, 3,023 Jews. That had been 597 BC. That's when Ezekiel and Ezekiel the prophet and Jehoiachin the king was taken. In Nebuchadnezzar's 18th year, that's the one we're talking about right now, the final fall, 832 people from Jerusalem. In his 23rd year, so he came back again a few years later, 745 Jews were taken into exile by Nebuzaradan, the commander of the imperial guard. There were 4,600 people in all. There is one little ray of hope here at the very end of the book. In the 37th year of the exile of Jehoiachin, king of Judah. Now he was 18 when he was captured. So this is 37 years after that, so he's about 55 now. And the year that evil Merodach became king of Babylon. So Nebuchadnezzar has died, and his son, evil Merodach, or Amul Marduk was the name of the god of the Babylonians, is now king. He released Jehoiachin, king of Judah, and freed him from prison on the 25th day of the 12th month. He spoke kindly to him. Now Nebuchadnezzar never did this, but his son did. He spoke kindly to him and gave him a seat of honor higher than those of the other kings who were with him in Babylon. So there are Zedekiah may have still been one of them. I don't know. Zedekiah was taken captive there too. Who knows? He may have died there. He probably would have died by this point, but who knows? So Jehoiachin put aside his prison clothes, and for the rest of his life ate regularly at the king's table. So from age 55 onward, he was no longer a prisoner. Day by day, the king of Babylon gave Jeconiah a regular allowance as long as he lived, until the day of his death. Now, it doesn't say when he died, so I don't know how much longer after that he lived. I mean, he's 55. He could have lived a while after that. Who knows? I really don't. But the reason why that is mentioned and why it's important is that Jeconiah would have been the last living member of the royal family of Judah. Now, I don't know about Zedekiah. He was also taken captive to Babylon. He probably was dead by this point. Who knows? I mean, he was blinded. He probably wasn't still alive, but who knows? But even if he had been, he was never really considered a proper king. So the important thing is to mention that the last living legitimate member of the royal family was released. He didn't go back to being king again, and his son didn't either, or his grandson. But there is a little bit of hope there at the end in mentioning that the last living member of the royal line of David was eventually released from prison and given a seat of honor at the king's table. A little bit of hope for the future. There's going to be a turnaround eventually. Let's read the rest of 2 Kings now. We can finally finish off the book of 2 Kings, which you've been working on for months. A year, I think. I don't know how long we've been on 2 Kings. Or Kings in general. 1 Kings and 2 Kings. We're finally going to finish off the book of 2 Kings today. Let's start in 2 Kings 24, verse 18. Zedekiah was 21 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 11 years. His mother's name was Hamutal, daughter of Jeremiah. She was from Libnah. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, just as Jehoiakim had Kim had done. It was because of the Lord's anger that all this happened to Jerusalem and Judah, and in the end, he thrust them from his presence. Now Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon. So in the 9th year of Zedekiah's reign, on the 10th day of the 10th month, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, marched against Jerusalem with his whole army. He encamped outside the city and built siege works all around it. The city was kept under siege until the 11th year of King Zedekiah. By the 9th day of the 4th month, the famine in the city had become so severe that there was no food for people to eat. Then the city wall was broken through, and the whole army fled at night through the gate between the two walls near the king's garden, where the Babylonians were surrounding the city. They fled toward the Arabah, but the Babylonian army pursued the king and overtook him in the plains of Jericho. All his soldiers were separated from him and scattered, and he was captured. He was taken to the king of Babylon at Riblah, where sentence was pronounced on him. They killed the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes. Then they put out his eyes, bound him with bronze shackles, and took him to Babylon. On the 17th day of the 5th month, the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, Nebuzaradan, commander of the imperial guard and official of the king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem. He set fire to the temple of the Lord, the royal palace, and all the houses of Jerusalem. Every important building he burned down. The whole Babylonian army, under the commander of the imperial guard, broke down the walls around Jerusalem. Nebuzaradan, the commander of the guard, carried into exile the people who remained in the city, along with the rest of the populace and those who had gone over to the king of Babylon. But the commander left behind some of the poorest people of the land to work the vineyards and the fields. The Babylonians broke up the bronze pillars, the movable stands, and the bronze sea that were the temple of the Lord, and they carried the bronze to Babylon. They also took away the pots, the shovels, the wick trimmers, the dishes, and all the bronze articles used in the temple service. The commander of the imperial guard took away the censers and sparkling bowls, all that were made of pure gold or silver. The bronze and the two pillars, the sea and the movable stands, which Solomon had made for the temple of the Lord, was more than could be weighed. Each pillar was more than 27 feet high. The bronze capital on top of one pillar was 4.5 feet high, and was decorated with a network and pomegranates of bronze all around. The other pillar with its network was similar. The commander of the guard took as prisoners Seraiah the chief priest, Zephaniah the priest next in rank, and the 3 doorkeepers. Of those still in the city, he took the officer in charge of the fighting men and 5 royal advisors. He also took the secretary, who was chief officer in charge of conscripting the people of the land, and 60 of his men who were found in the city. Nebuzaradan the commander took them all and brought them to the king of Babylon at Riblah. There at Riblah, in the land of Hamath, the king had them executed. So Judah went into captivity away from her land. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, appointed Gedaliah, son of Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, to be over the people he had left behind in Judah. When all the army officers and their men heard that the king of Babylon had appointed Gedaliah as governor, they came to Gedaliah at Mizpah, Ishmael, son of Nethaniah, Johanan, son of Kareiah, Seraiah, son of Tanhumath, the Nethathite, Jezaniah, the son of the Maccathite, and their men. Gedaliah took an oath to reassure them and their men Do not be afraid of the Babylonian officials, he said. Settle down on the land and serve the king of Babylon, and it will go well with you. In the 7th month, however, Ishmael, son of Nethaniah, the son of Elishama, who was of royal blood, came with 10 men and assassinated Gedaliah, and also the men of Judah and the Babylonians who were with him in Mizpah. At this, all the people, from the least to the greatest, together with the army officers, fled to Egypt for fear of the Babylonians. In the 37th year of the exile of Jeconiah, king of Judah, in the year Evil-Merodach became king of Babylon. I believe this is in 563 BC. 37th year, 563, 562 or so BC, 560-ish BC. In the year Evil-Merodach became king of Babylon, he released Jehoiachin from prison on the 27th day of the 12th month. He spoke kindly to him, and gave him a seat of honor higher than those of the other kings who were with him in Babylon. So Jeconiah put aside his prison clothes, and for the rest of his life ate regularly at the king's table. Day by day, the king gave Jeconiah a regular allowance as long as he lived. Whew, we're finally done with the book of Kings. Second Chronicles 36, verse 11. Zedekiah was 21 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 11 years. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord his God, and did not humble himself before Jeremiah the prophet, who spoke the word of the Lord. He also rebelled against King Nebuchadnezzar, who had made him take an oath in God's name. He became stiff-necked and hardened his heart, and would not turn to the Lord, the God of Israel. Furthermore, all the leaders of the priests and the people became more and more unfaithful, following all the detestable practices of the nations, and defiling the temple of the Lord, which he had consecrated in Jerusalem. The Lord, the God of their fathers, sent word to them through his messengers again and again, because he had pity on his people and on his dwelling place. But they mocked God's messengers, despised his words, and scoffed at his prophets until the wrath of the Lord was aroused against his people, and there was no remedy. He brought up against them the king of the Babylonians, who killed their young men with the sword in the sanctuary, and spared neither young man nor young woman, old man or aged. God handed all of them over to Nebuchadnezzar. He carried to Babylon all the articles in the temple of God, both large and small, and the treasures of the Lord's temple, and the treasures of the king and his officials. They set fire to God's temple, and broke down the wall of Jerusalem. They burned all the palaces and destroyed everything of value there. He carried into exile to Babylon the remnant, who escaped from the sword, and they became servants to him and his sons, until the kingdom of Persia came to power. We'll read about that in the book of Daniel. The land enjoyed its Sabbath rests. All the time of its desolation it rested, until the 70 years were completed in fulfillment of the word of the Lord spoken by Jeremiah. We're going to stop there. Actually, no, well, there's technically a few verses left in 2 Chronicles. These are also the same verses at the beginning of Ezra. This is getting ahead of ourselves, because we still need to read Lamentations and Ezekiel and Daniel. So we're not ready to get into this just yet, but I want to finish off 2 Chronicles. And technically there are a few verses left in it, so I'm going to go ahead and read them so I can put the bow on Jeremiah, 2 Kings, and 2 Chronicles all in one day. 2 Chronicles 36, verse 22. In the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, this is 539 BC, or 536 BC, I forget which. In order to fulfill the word of the Lord spoken by Jeremiah, the Lord moved the heart of Cyrus, king of Persia, to make a proclamation throughout his realm and to put it in writing. This is what Cyrus, king of Persia, says. The Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and he has appointed me to build a temple for him at Jerusalem in Judah. Any one of his people among you, may the Lord his God be with him, and let him go up. And we'll pick up that story in Ezra, because literally the beginning of the end of 2 Chronicles is also the beginning of Ezra. But we are not ready to get into the rest of that yet. But we have finally finished Kings and Chronicles and Jeremiah all in one day. We have already seen what happens in the long run. They're going to be released from captivity by the king of Persia after the king of Persia conquers Babylon. But we're not there yet. We've got to go through Lamentations, where we lament the fall of Jerusalem. We've got to go through Ezekiel, which tells the story of the fall of Jerusalem from the perspective of someone in Babylon, not in Jerusalem like Jeremiah was. And then we got to go through Daniel, who is also an exile in Babylon, and gives us a lot to talk about. So we're not ready to move on to Ezra yet, but we have finally finished Kings and Chronicles. Whew, we're working on those for a year. Oh, well, technically, we do need to go back and read the genealogies of the beginning of 1 Chronicles at some point. I am going to do that. I am not ignoring that material. I just wanted to save it for later.